Hello, everyone. Here is the webinar for LIFE concept note for nature and biodiversity. Sveiki visi, aš pradžioje padarysiu trumpą įžangą lietuviškai ir tada pristatysiu mūsų pagrindinį seminaro vedėją Mikko Tiira. Tai šis webinaras iš tiesų sudarytas iš dviejų dalių. Pirmoji valanda nuo 10 iki 11 bus skirta koncepcijos rengimui šių metų kvietimui, būtent gamtos srityje, o nuo 11 iki 12 bus atsakymai į klausimus ir tie klausimus galėsite užduoti tiek dėl koncepcijos rengimo, tiek dėl įgyvendinamų projektų, taip pat ir dėl integruotų projektų įgyvendinimo. Klausimus prašome rašyti skiltyje questions, kurią turėtumėt matyti savo ekrano dešinėje arba jeigu mažam telefone žiūrite mažame renginį, tada ekrano apačioje. Jeigu turite techninių klausimų, juos kokių nors nesklandumų, galbūt dėl ryšio ar dėl programos valdymo, tada galite juos rašyti lietuvių kalba chat skiltyje, nes chat skiltį tai valdome mes, būtent projekto LIFE gebėjimų stiprinimas Lietuvoje grupė, o questions juos žiūrės mūsų ekspertas Mikko Tiira, tai prašome klausimus, jeigu galite užduoti anglų kalbą į questions skiltį. Pamiršau prisistatyti, aš esu Aušra Šmitienė, atstovaujanti projektą LIFE gebėjimų stiprinimas Lietuvoje. And I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Mikko Tiira from Finland, who has prepared lots of LIFE projects and have been managing at least two, to my knowledge, nature projects, and who has been the main person writing LIFE IP Fresh Habit. So, Mikko, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and glad that I'm able to give you a presentation on the concept note. I would like to first start with the notion that we are all in the same boat, in the sense that this is the first time all the projects, apart from the IPs, are going to write the concept note. So it's going to be a joint journey for all of us. I'm also responsible for writing at least one concept note for this upcoming application round. But I will start with the presentation on let's say, a bit overall issues, and then after that, I will open the e-proposal, and I've made one, let's say, sketch concept note, and we can check using the e-proposal what is supposed to be the content of each section of the concept note. But I'll now start sharing the presentation, and I think that you can now see the presentation. I hope our dogs will not interrupt you, and still one of my daughter is at home, soon leaving to school. Okay, just very briefly, who am I? I've been involved in LIFE for quite a long time, and especially lately been involved in the capacity building project as a consultant for several countries, and also quite a lot put effort on the promotion of LIFE IP projects. So involved in the Fresh Habit, but also I've been the member of the team for putting together the Estonian LIFE IP on water. So different kinds of experience on LIFE. Briefly about the LIFE in Finland, we've been active in the EU and in the LIFE family since 1995. Metsähallitus Parks and Wildlife Finland has been involved in 50 LIFE projects, and we are now starting 3 new LIFE projects in the August. So our last application round was we submitted 3 proposals and we got all them through. So we are extremely happy. The total budgets can be seen in the slide. Most of our projects are dealing with the habitat restoration, but lately we've been also more engaged and more involved, especially on the species projects, because they actually give a bit more freedom for the actions to be implemented, and you are not that much, let's say, you don't need to implement all the actions inside Natura 2000. And in the picture you can see that sometimes things just don't go exactly as planned. Okay, but today's topic is about life, nature and biodiversity. Couple of just basic lines which I know you all know well in advance. So nature is about mostly dealing with Natura 2000. It's about Birds and Habitats Directive. You can be mostly inside the Natura 2000 network, and working outside, especially for the habitats, requires justifications, and it's a bit more free when you are working with the species. Biodiversity strand is more linked to the biodiversity strategy of the EU, and especially with a couple of specified targets. It should address the wild flora, and it's more or less the idea is to working on the wider landscape and overall biodiversity issues and challenges, largely outside Natura 2000. Just as a reminder for you that we all know that like nature, you can apply best practice actions. So these are the most appropriate, cost-efficient, and state-of-art techniques, and you're of course expected to justify these best practice actions already in your concept note. But then two other categories of actions is the demonstration and pilot action, and the difference between demonstration and pilot can be highlighted very simply in a way that demonstration is that you are demonstrating something in a bigger scale in the live project than has been done previously, or you are demonstrating an action that has been carried out in another context or in another environment in other sites, and now you are using it inside your live project. Pilot is something that you are using something that has not been tested anywhere else. It's something that is completely new. One thing that has to be kept in mind that when you have these kinds of actions, which I hope we all will have in our concept notes already, we need to have at least demonstration actions, is that you need to take into account that then you are testing and how the techniques and the actions really work, and then you're obliged to disseminate this. And this is something that has to be taken into account in your project planning. Later on, a bit more words about what is meant by the sustainability, and especially these couple of new buzzwords of life: replicability and transferability. Life nature, we know, as in the biodiversity, 25% of the budget needs to go to the concrete conservation actions, and we can keep in mind that it's all preparatory actions needed to implement the concrete actions are calculated inside the 25% budget calculation. In the concept note, you just need to tick a box and mention that, okay, I can guarantee that 25% of my project is related to conservation actions, unless you have the exceptions, because there are a couple of exceptions if you're planning a project on the marine Natura 2000 areas or the surveillance of the Natura 2000 habitats and species. But I don't know whether you have these kinds of cases. Then you need to completely fulfill at least one of the topics of the multi-annual working program. Please do read the multi-annual working program. You don't get any extra points for trying to fulfill two, because you can get the necessary 10 points in the latter phase in the evaluation just by fulfilling one completely. EU financing is still 60 for the life nature, and life environment is dropping down to 55, and it can be up to 75 if 50%, at least 50% of your budget targeted to concrete conservation actions is related to priority habitats or species. So this basically means that you can have a project applying for 75% in a project where you have priority species and non-priority species. You just need to specify that at least 50% of your concrete conservation budget is targeting priority habitats and species. Biodiversity is about, as I explained, biodiversity strategy, and you can see here, you can check the topics in the multi-annual working program and the guidelines. This is a bit more, let's say, a directive which kinds of actions are favored, but let's say it's about ecosystem services, green and blue infra, in alien invasive species and threatened species. But they have to, yes, address the natural habitats of wild fauna and flora, but I understand that here is no applicants for life biodiversity. Okay, special features about life, nature, and biodiversity. I think proposals need to have also other than just best practice actions, because then it might be a bit too conservative, because still also in the nature conservation we need to explore new possibilities and find new ways of working and to increase cost efficiency. Of course, we have to be in constant movement all the time. We never have to be, let's say, too satisfied that we know how the system works. We need to develop all the time. That's why I think in all the projects, in the nature projects, to be competitive, you need to have also demonstration and pilot, or even pilot actions, but at least demonstration. And this sometimes requires a bit in, let's say, innovative thinking. It could be just a change in the, let's say, ongoing methods, testing new kinds of tools or restoration measures, or new kinds of, let's say, monitoring tools or actions, things like that have to be kept in mind. You can have a project that is including the combination targeting the species and the habitats at the same time, so you don't need to just, if you're having a species project, you of course you can then target your actions towards habitats. These points later are more for the, let's say, for the final phase, but just as a reminder for you to keep clear that we have SCIs that are for the Habitats Directive and SPAs that are for the Birds Directive. Check in your second phase that in SCAs you can only target your actions towards habitats, and SPAs you can only for the birds. Usually, of course, these sites are overlapping, but this is something, an easy mistake to make. Also, the second one is that sometimes not the standard data forms or the Natura 2000 are not completed. They are not complete. You may have a bit more information on the sites, but the only thing that the Commission believes is the official standard data form. If you're targeting actions towards species and habitats that are not listed, the competent authority needs to commit to supplement the data before the end of the project. These are, of course, not now so apparent in the concept note phase. And then we might all know that we be quite careful about the recurring actions, that your project is not full of those, and if they are all the recurring actions, you need to already now in the concept note also explain how the sustainability of these actions is taken into account. Okay, habitat actions inside, outside Natura 2000 is possible. It's up to the applicant to provide a justification. Our experience lately has been that if you're able to justify the actions by explaining the potential effects to the species, then it's more easily accepted. If you're only talking about the coherence of the habitat types, you might end up in some difficulties. It is a bit strange, but this is how we also got, let's say, informal information that try to use the species as the explanation for the actions outside, also in the projects that are dealing with the habitats as their main objective. Of course, in the projects that are dealing with the habitats, you can use certain species as indicators of the success. So in that case, you can sort of find the explanation using the species. Then there's a specific section about the EU added value in the concept note, and especially this is important also in the final proposal. I think that the overall thinking has to be coherent, right, already in the concept note phase, and not just thinking that, okay, I don't need to take this too seriously in the concept note phase. Although it is clearly said that basically the EU added value in the concept note phase is mostly analyzed how your project fits to the LIFE program. So in the LIFE Nature, you are basically explaining how your project fulfills the criteria in the articles 10 to 12, which are mainly about LIFE Nature. It's about species and habits, so it's not that difficult to justify that. But at the same time, you need to keep in mind the multi-purpose approaches, which kinds of other policies your project is not just basically linked to, but actually which of the policies you are actually targeting with concrete actions already during the project. And this is exactly what is also meant by the word transferability. How do you actually transfer your project results into concrete actions also in other policies? In our last revision phase, we got quite a lot of feedback on this aspect, that it is not anymore enough just to say that my project is slightly linked to these policies, but they challenge you and ask, what are you really doing in concrete ways? Are you targeting any specific actions towards these stakeholders that can influence these policies? So already in the concept note phase, you are supposed to also provide information about your multi-purpose and synergies, and in that way you are addressing the transferability and replicability actions. Okay, the overall impact is something we can come back to that a bit later when we check the selection criteria for the concept note phase. Keep also in mind that true international projects are favored at the moment, and they are actually they have increased the points for the international project. They increased from 3 to 4, and to receive the 4 points, you of course have to have a project that is really a international project. You have similar kinds of habitats, and you are trying to really concretely change the experience between the participating beneficiaries, and there's really something concrete and joint in the project. And so at least we are at the Parks and Wildlife Finland currently quite a lot of looking for potential to have international projects. 2 of the new projects we are now going to start. One is about flying squirrel. It will be a project together with Estonia, and there's another project that is dealing with the coastal habitats. It's also together with Estonia. And let's say I also wish that in the long run we would have joint projects also with Lithuania at some point, because I know we are facing exactly similar kind of challenges in the Nordic and Baltic countries with respect to the nature conservation, I think. Then a bit more words about I call them the abilities, sustainability, transferability, and replicability. What does it actually really mean? There's special emphasis on the sustainability. It is something that is linked to the different kinds of approval processes. If you have a management plan or something, it has to be approved before the end date of your project. Or if you are making any kinds of, let's say, new recommendations, methods, or something that is to be, let's say, you aim at the change in the certain types things are to be carried out, let's say, by the farmers or by the landowners or by the fishermen or by any of your let's say key stakeholders, then of course it would be really good that these kinds of methods or recommendations are also officially adopted, but before the end of the project and even implemented. So this also requires that you reach the relevant authorities already at the planning phase of the project, so that when you leave the concept note, it doesn't come as a surprise to some of the key authorities that are expecting them to support your project in the next phase. These kinds of sustainability issues are to be explained in one part of the concept note. Sustainability is also about the sustainability of your project results. It means that you have to already in the concept note, you need to show which kinds of actions you need to still continue after the end of the project. It is basically the list of the actions that you know that are not non-recurring, are to be repeated or needs continuation. It's about monitoring. It could be something related to your recurring management actions and things like that. You need to explain how you will carry on these actions? Who will be responsible for them? What resources will you use for this sustainability? So it's actually quite pragmatic. Make a list of the actions you know you need to continue, and then consider how you will deal with that. This about the private landowners. At least in the Finnish process, we need to have the commitments for the landowners for not jeopardizing the results of the project by not at least for the 20 years. Of course, these kind of commitments are not needed in your concept note, but there's clear link between this issue and the risk assessment of your concept note. In the concept note, there is risks and contingency plan, your mitigation strategy. And if you're dealing with the private landowners, of course, I would recommend you to explain it as a risk and how you've handled that already at this stage. Have you already discussed with the private landowners? Are you expected to have these commitments, or are there really risks anymore related to the working with the private landowners? Transferability and replicability are the actions where you need to now already think in the planning of your project. Who are your key stakeholders? Who can make a difference? Who are the ones that are needed? Let's say if you're working with the farmers, who are there certain organizations that are representing farmers? Are there, let's say, certain best practice guidelines that are adopted and used by the farmers? You need to sort of think who you need to reach in order to make a difference and make an impact and with your actions. And what is important is that you already at this concept note phase indicate which kind of concrete actions you have towards reaching these stakeholders and what kind of actions you are going to really do. It's not about just plain dissemination. It should be something a bit more, let's say, a bit more concrete. It could be something that you're training, you're making policy briefs, or you are explaining and providing guidelines for, let's say, a group of managers that were dealing with the upcoming agri-environmental support scheme or things like that. The ministry that is dealing with the fisheries issues, you need to reach them and explain them. So this is something, just keep in mind that you analyze who you need to reach and which kind of actions you are really concretely doing already during the project. Don't think that this transferability is something that happens only after the end of the project. If that would be the case in your proposal, then you are in problems, I think. Replicability is something that, of course, can be considered in a way that if your action is targeting, let's say, 2 national parks in Lithuania, could this be implemented in the other national parks? Or could it be implemented in another country? That's why replicability is something, if you have an international project, you are already replicating your project and you get an additional score, not only just in the international scoring, but also in the other aspects related to the replicability. This is exactly the same kind of thing that is for the transferability. You need to consider how and where your project could be replicated and what are your actions to ensure that this replication might take place during the project. General hints for the overall project proposal, but also for the concept note phase, is that once again, this is about being clear, being logical, and providing a coherent story. So that you have defined clearly what is the pre-operational context of your project. So what is the current situation of the problem you are targeting? And what is your aim, where you start from and where you wish to end to? And what is the change you are looking for? Then this leads also to the clear explanation, what are the problems behind, what you are targeting in the projects and what are the reasons for those problems, so that you can provide easily a link between your pre-operational context, the problems, and the objectives that are linked to your actions. So that there's logic clearly. This is also about the feasibility that you have explained where you start, you know the reasons, and then you also know that you can, which kind of actions you can do in order to solve these problems, which are then, turned into in your project objectives. And everything should be also defined in the way that it's measurable. It's qualitative and it's quantitative. Let's say for the species, you need to indicate that a certain increase in the population size is expected, or in the habitat projects, a certain hectares of certain habitat types will be restored and leading to the improved conservation status. And this explanation of the conservation status could be something that is taking place in the long run, not during the project, but later. But you have to explain this clearly, where you start from, where you're going to. And this is exactly what they are looking for in your concept note as well. Then also this sustainability is really much addressed. As I explained, you need to address how you will going to continue certain actions if they are needed, who will continue, and which money you use for that. And this is something where you can, of course, try to you perhaps don't know it now, but you still have to write something. It means that okay, you will use the overall budget of the national park, or you will continue using the agri-environment support for things, but you have to have a certain idea of a plan of that. And then this is don't take it a bit too seriously at this stage. Write something other than just explain that this is completely, you really don't know. You need to be quite convincing at this part. Yes, the transferability and replicability, once again, remember that you need to have these actions already during the project. This is not anymore something that happens only after the project. You are expected to be quite active already during the project period. As an example, we have a project that is targeting the beetle, 8 directed beetle species in Finland. And the Commission in the revision phase just insisted us that we need to try to, we indicated that, okay, we are talking about this, how to take into account these beetles in the forest restoration and mire restoration, together with our Estonian and Latvian and Swedish colleagues. And they said, okay, that's not enough just to go and discuss. You need to organize something more concrete. So they sort of forced us that we need to invite these key stakeholders over to Finland to explain in real cases on site how this system works in Finland, which kind of guidelines we have, and also they sort of more or less forced us that we need to engage the forestry sector a bit more closer, not just about nature conservation or organizations, but also how do we reach the forestry organizations, Sveagug and the Latvian forestry, state forestry organization, and let's say in Estonia, RMK. So they really asked us really concrete actions. So take these into account and really think also outside the boundaries of Lithuania immediately. This transferability and replicability is something that they look for, that you have actions that are, you sort of try to reach also the other countries. You don't need to necessarily have them as beneficiaries, but think how the other countries would learn from the experience and the lessons learned that you are receiving in your projects. Then of course they are checking already in the concept note phase the feasibilities also about which kinds of consortium you have in place. Do you have the correct beneficiaries on board related to the reaching of your objectives, or are you missing, let's say, a couple of key stakeholders or ministries or something like that? So check that you have a proper consortium. Of course, I know that the consortium between the concept note and the final proposal can change, but there are of course some problems with that because there are certain limitations how much the budget can change. So, and also you need to think which stakeholders, if they are not your beneficiaries, you need to reach, and which have the biggest influence and potential to affect your project actions. These need to already in the concept note provide some information in the part called a partnership. And yes, read the guidelines. They are quite clearly and easy, clearly made and quite easy to understand. They are getting better and better all the time. But it's about, once again, about logical story. If you read your concept note, an outsider that is, let's say, understand only limited amount of your context of your project should really understand what you are doing and why you are doing that. Okay, a couple of words about the budget. In the concept note phase, it's only the sums per budget category in your proposal. But in order to reach this, I think you need to collect the data per action, per cost category already at this stage. And the main reason for that, that is that the EU contribution may increase only maximum 10% between the concept note and the final proposal. So the general advice, also what unofficially heard from EASME, is that do overestimate your budget at this stage, but do not overestimate it, because if it's really much higher than any of the other similar kinds of projects previously implemented in Lithuania with a similar context, you might really jeopardize one of the key factors. It's the value for money. So let's say the overestimation would be around 10 to 15%. This gives you probably enough margin that for the final proposal you are not in problems with this 10% maximum increase of the EU contribution. Just briefly showing you how we are dealing with this budget issue at the moment. I know it's quite small, the boxes here, but we are collecting using a clear and simple Excel table cost per action, per site, per beneficiary already for the concept note phase. And here we collect the information, one line per one action. What are the personal costs? We already at this stage ask which kinds of persons are needed and what is the average daily salary, so that we can reach, let's say, pretty accurate estimate already at this stage. Then we of course collect the information about the estimation of travel cost, external assistance. So basically we more or less force all the beneficiaries to start thinking immediately at this stage what are the real actions and real costs of your planned actions already for the concept note phase. That's why this sort of guarantees that we have a pretty realistic understanding of the budget already for the concept note phase. So I advise you to do it like this so that you don't end up in really rough estimates. The concept note award criteria have also been published. It's quite simple as you can see. There's two criteria. It's overall quality of the proposal, overall EU added value. They will apply a minimum pass score for these two criteria. Minimum pass score will be 15 in total, the maximum 50. It is, I don't have even slightest clue where will be the cut rate for the ones that will be invited for the final application. But what they are looking at, the overall quality of the proposal, they are checking the clarity and the logic of your proposal. And have you really explained clearly the pre-operational context, where you start from, what's the problem, where you wish to end to? Is the actions that you are going to carry out, are they feasible? Are they something that are related to the objectives? The feasibility is also about your consortium. Do you have all the beneficiaries that are needed for the implementation of your project, or have you foreseen clearly which kinds of problems and threats you might be facing during your project proposal? And the indicative value for money. This is something, it's quite difficult sometimes to understand what they really mean with the value for money. But we know from the Finnish experience that the projects with the budget of more than 10 million euros are excessive. So in our context, there was no problems in the projects where the overall budget was around 9 million euros. It was fully approved. But of course, this indicative value for money also related to your expected impact. How large proportion of certain habitat type will be improved, and how large proportion of the overall, let's say, population of the species will be targeted. This is also something to take into account when sort of considering what is the indicative value for money. So I would not recommend you to submit proposals that are really much more expensive in monetary wise than the ones you've been earlier submitting, but of course could be slightly more expensive. This is very difficult to give any exact advice. The overall EU added value is mostly about the contribution to the LIFE priorities, and in your case, in the nature case, it's about articles 10 to 12. Expected impact, as I explained, how large share of a certain habitat type in your country is targeted by the project, or how much proportion of a species population. And it's about the sustainability. Is your project resulting in sustainable results? Have you explained clearly already in the concept note which actions need to be continued, who will continue, with what money is used? Looking at this criteria, you note that there's no specific words about transferability and replicability, but still it's something I'm really sure that you need to also address and take into account. It's about the feasibility issues at least. Timetables you are aware of. We have a deadline coming in a couple of weeks. You will get the invitations for the full proposal in October. What we know at this stage is double the money available for the projects will be invited for the final proposal. So simple mathematics, 50% of the concept notes will be probably getting the financing. By the end of January 2019 will be the deadline for the final proposal. They have not addressed yet the exact date for the final deadline, because it is slightly dependent on the amount of concept notes the ESMA will be receiving. But of course, you cannot wait until October to start writing your full proposal. So please, probably you already understood that you need to start preparing your final proposal right after the summer vacations, hopefully at the latest, because the final proposal will be as detailed as earlier. We are not forcing any kinds of changes in the final proposal content. So there's lots and lots of more information to be included. Note also that 60% of the project fund reserve will be dedicated for nature and biodiversity, meaning basically that if you succeed with the concept note phase, the likelihood of your project to be financed is pretty high, especially in nature and biodiversity. So I would even give a recommendation that try to produce as many concept notes as possible, because if you pass that, then there's quite high likelihood that your project will be funded. Of course, it's easily said than done, because there's a quite high amount of co-financing needed, and there are of course differences and challenges in collecting the co-financing between the countries. And lastly, already at this stage, I recommend you to use something equivalent of logical framework, at least collecting information about your project idea, project actions based on the problems, objectives, which kind of actions you have per objectives, what is your expected outcomes. Already at this stage, I recommend you to start thinking about your indicators of the success and effectiveness, threats and assumptions you already need in the concept note phase, which are the beneficiaries you are engaging and other stakeholders. So some kind of clear structure. This is not always absolutely needed if you have as a background of your project some kind of already existing strategy or a plan, which is usually structured in a way that it's defining the problems and the objective and the actions needed. So you can use that, but you have to have this kind of thinking all the time. So that was about the presentation, and now I think I move to the e-proposal. And I've made one Lithuanian concept note here. It is sometimes a bit slow, as you probably all know. Okay, you probably know all the basics for opening a new proposal. So it starts here, create a new proposal. Once you start entering the basic data of your project, let's not use any time for that. If you want your national authority to access your proposal, click yes. I think this is something that is a clear recommendation for all the national contact points, that please use that so that they can see and they can probably help you then. The basic information is in the first page of the concept note. One thing is about the expected start and end date. These can of course be changed for the final proposal, but this is just an indication what is your current idea for the starting and end date. And this is quite interesting project. It will last 1 month. Language of the proposal here is actually an indication which is going to be the language of your final proposal, because the concept notes has to be submitted in English in any case. But for the final proposal, you would have a chance of using also your own language, Lithuanian, but at least in Finland, we prepare all the proposals always in English. And for a simple reason, we know that in EASME, no one in the evaluation team that is from Finland. So they would need to translate the proposals in any case. Then is list of regions where your project is to be implemented. This is the basic data in the first page. Then about the coordinating beneficiary data, the legal information is of course the legal name that can be found in your legal registration documents. Sometimes we've faced some problems when we've been using the full English names. There seems to be some kind of database the Commission is using, the EASME is using to check the legal names, but use the legal name you know is for the organization. Then only the other point here is that the coordinating beneficiary details is that you explain just what is the role of your organization in general, the coordinating beneficiaries, and what is your specific experience and competence in the field of the proposal is the latter part. So remember to address these both. You also note here that not even the coordinating beneficiary needs to sign any kinds of forms. So there are no commitment forms from any of the beneficiaries, not even the coordinating beneficiaries. So no signatures needed. And also you will note when you start writing the other parts of the proposal that you are not allowed to insert any pictures or tables or anything to this concept note. The concept note will be around 10 to 11 pages, and you can see that there are character limitations. This means also that when you are writing this concept note, keep track on the maximum the character numbers if you are typing your concept note in other not in e-proposal. If you're using Word documents, keep track on the character numbers so that they will not be exceeded. Okay, the concept note, the summary description starts with the species and habitats and body of the problem and issues targeted by the project. And this is exactly what I've been explaining you, that you need to explain here what is the pre-operational context, what is the current situation with a certain problem you have, what are the causes of the problem, and what are the, let's say, the quantitative and qualitative terms related to the species you are targeting. Okay, this is the problem with the, let's say, the coastal dunes have been deteriorating for a long time, and the you have 2,000 hectares of coastal meadows left in Lithuania, and you are targeting, let's say, to restore 500 hectares of coastal dunes. And the problem for the coastal dunes that they are not in favorable condition might be that they be planted with pines or there's other kinds of, let's say, management challenges. And also you then explain why the project is needed. The project objectives part is you specify clearly your objective per problem you've identified earlier, and it is in a concrete way that your project is related in let's say in solving the problem related to the coastal dunes, and it will affect this and this amount of coastal dunes in Lithuania. Also in this case you might need to keep in mind that you might need, it would be quite, let's say, convenient to have at least one objective that is linked to the transferability and replicability of your project, so that really you can show to the Commission that you are really thinking beyond your own project already at this stage. We've started using already last year in our full proposal in the E-category actions named by transferring the key lessons of the project to the key stakeholders as name of the action. This is already something that forces you to think already at this stage beyond your project. So this is also something that you only have 2,500 characters here. So think that you might only have room to address the main objectives, but the ones you address them clearly so that it's understandable. Don't compromise that you want to have as many objectives as possible if it's at the cost of the clarity. Take the less important objectives out and concentrate only on the key ones you have and explain them clearly. It's much better than trying to explain as many objectives as possible. Because at this stage you are basically selling your project idea. This is what we are basically planning to do, and this is why we do, and these are the objectives. It's not yet the complete list of what you are doing. Then the actions and means part. This is very similar, all these three other chapters here, than it was is in the final proposal. Please do click here yes for the concrete conservation actions 25%, unless you are having this exception, but I think you perhaps don't have these kinds of exception projects now. If you would be clicking here no by accident, it could jeopardize the whole concept note, because then you're not fulfilling one of the key criteria. I don't know whether the Commission would really ask you to that, did you make a mistake here or not. I don't know, and I wouldn't rely on that. There's no internal checks of any kind in the concept note, so when you when you go through your proposal and validate your proposal, there are no any kinds of alerts on this issue, I think. So this is basically a list of actions you are going to do and the means. Remember to include, this is about actions and means, which actions you have and how you are going to do. We are going to restore meadows by clearing bushes and mowing. So that's an example. This could be a bit boring if you start listing just by actions. This is what we are going to do. I would perhaps recommend you to return back to your problems and objectives and maybe provide a list that you have a problem with.
Atsiprašau visų dalyvių, nutriko mūsų ryšys, bet tuoj pat turėtų ekspertas grįžti. Mikko, if you hear me, you are offline. Could you please connect back? Atsiprašom už nesklandumus, tikiuosi tuoj pavyks išspręsti. Kol laukime Mikos sugrįžtant, norėjau visiems matau, kad jau keletą klausimų uždavėte, tai tikrai drąsiai galite rašyti ir kitus klausimus į questions skiltį. Labai gerai, kad rašote jos anglų kalba, tuomet ekspertas iš karto galės jos perskaityti ir gyvai atsakyti, kai tik baigs savo pristatymą. Jo pristatyme yra numatyta užbaigti visą e-proposal dalį, visą koncepciją e-proposal ir tada jau pereiti prie klausimų atsakymų. Taip pat į seminaro pabaigą kviestume jūs užpildyti apklausą polls skiltyje, ar seminaras padės jums ruošti koncepciją ir ar, jeigu užduosite klausimą arba atsakyta jūsų klausimą, tai prašome nepamiršti užpildyti polls mūsų anketos. Taip pat seminarui pasibaigus bus parengtas seminaro video įrašas ir galėsite jį seminarą peržiūrėti visą nuo pradžios iki pabaigos. Visi, kurie matėte jį gyvai, galėsite iškart peržiūrėti šitoje LIFE platformoje, o taip pat įrašas bus patalpintas ir mūsų YouTube kanale LIFE Projektai LT. Kol kas Mikko nematau, kad būtų prisijungęs. Galbūt aš tada iškart galėčiau Ramūnui Povilanskui atsakyti į jo klausimą dėl tarptautinių projektų. Dėl tarptautinių projektų koncepcijų, tai iš tiesų LIFE tarptautinių, net ir tuo atveju, kai LIFE projektai yra tarptautiniai, koncepciją ruošia koordinuojantysis partneris, tai yra vienas partneris ruošia koncepciją ir iš karto aprašo visą projektą, tai yra aprašo ir partnerystę. Tai yra koncepcija rengiama viena, bendra visam projektui ir tik tas partneris, kuris yra pagrindinis, tik jis pildo koncepciją. Tai čia jau apsisprendžia tarp partnerių, kuris iš jų yra pagrindinis, ar Lietuvos partneris, ar užsienio partneris, ir tas pagrindinis partneris pildo koncepciją e-proposal sistemoje. Jeigu norėtumėte kreiptis nacionalinio kofinansavimo, dėl nacionalinio kofinansavimo jau kreipėsi tik Lietuvos partneriai, tačiau LIFE Gamtos ir bioįvairovės išteklių srityje dėl koncepcijos nacionalinio kofinansavimo reikės kreiptis tik tai rudenį, po to, kai gausite teigiamą atsakymą iš Europos komisijos, kad jūsų koncepcija atrinkta ir galite ruošti pilną paraišką. Taip pat primenu, kad, kaip ir Mikko minėjo, gamtos ir biologinės įvairovės sričiai koncepcijos terminas Europos komisijai yra birželio 14 diena. Iki tos dienos būtina e-proposal sistemoje pateikti koncepciją. Dar vis neturime Mikko eteryje. Laukiame jo Yeah. Yes, I see that Mikko is online currently, so I hope, Mikko, you will soon connect back. Mikko, feel free to connect anytime. I will answer questions. I will answer one question that has been raised in Lithuanian for the moment. Taip atsakau Ramūnui į atsakymą. Tarptautiniai partneriai nėra būtini bioįvairovės projektuose, tačiau kadangi yra privalumai teikiami dėl projekto sklaidos, dėl jo tikslų apimties, tai visada yra privalumas įtraukti tarptautinius partnerius, tačiau tikrai tai nėra būtina. Užtenka partnerių vien Lietuvoje ir užtenka partnerių suvykdyti vien Lietuvoje, priklausomai nuo buveinės, kuri yra jūsų pagrindinis tikslas, arba priklausomai nuo rūšies, kuri yra jūsų pagrindinis tikslas, nuo jų paplitimo ir nuo jų aplinkosauginių problemų. Jeigu visada galite kviesti partnerius tiek iš Latvijos, tiek iš Lenkijos, ypač jeigu tai yra susijęs su ta buveinė. Jeigu tos buveinės, tos pačios problemos yra ir Latvijoje, tai sveikintina tų partnerių dalyvavimas ir tada jau tie partneriai galėtų dalyvauti kaip asocijuoti partneriai. Ir tuo tikslu būtų gerai iš anksto su jais suderinti dėl jų dalyvavimo, dėl jų veiklų, dėl jų biudžeto ir tada įtraukti į paraišką, į koncepciją. Ir nors koncepciją teiktumėte tik jūs kaip vienas koordinuojantysis partneris ir aprašytumėte tą partnerystę su užsienio šalimis, vis tiek būtina iš anksto suderinti su tais užsienio partneriais. Mikko, I see that you are online. Could you please come back? Taip pat, jeigu kas nors, aš tikiuosi, mums pavyks taip pat atstatyti ryšį, jeigu kas nors norėtumėte gyvai užduoti klausimą ir diskutuoti su pranešėju, mes dar turime visą valandą laiko, tai parašykite mums į chat ir pabandysime jungti jūs gyvai į eterį, taip kaip šiuo metu esu aš, galite būti be kameros, galite būti tik tai su mikrofonu, tada jūs galėsite užduoti klausimą tiesiogiai ekspertui ir diskutuoti su juo. Tik tai prieš tai turite į chat skiltį mums pranešti, kad jūs norėtumėte ir kad turite sąlygas. Ir tada mes jūs pakviesime į sceną, jeigu norite gyvai žodžiu užduoti klausimus. Taip pat dar norėjau pažymėti, kad turime galimybę ir po seminaro užduoti klausimus elektroniniu paštu ekspertui. Esame taip su juo sutarę. Tad jeigu jums peržiūrint seminaro įrašą arba jau rašant koncepciją, pilnant konkrečias formas, dar iškils klausimų susijusių su LIFE programos reikalavimais arba norėtumėt išsiaiškinti kai kurios LIFE gairių reikalavimus, kaip rašyti, ką rašyti, kokias veiklas įtraukti, ar dėl išlaidų, visus tokius klausimus, taip pat ir po seminaro iki birželio 14 dienos galėtumėte siūsti mums info@lifeprojektai.lt ir kartu ekspertui, pridedant ir jį į adresatą, ir jeigu dar bus pakankamai laiko iki paraiškų, iki koncepcijų pateikimo, jeigu ekspertas turės dar laiko, tuomet atsakys į jūsų klausimus elektroniniu paštu. Mikko, I see that you are online. If you can write in the chat why you have problems, or if you can answer my phone call. I'm calling currently to you. Then please do that. We will try to solve the problem. Labai atsiprašome už nesklandumus. Tai dar tą pačią progą pasakysiu, kad mūsų svetainėje lifeprojektai.lt galite rasti ir gamtos srities koncepcijos formos pavyzdį su visais laukais, kuriuos reikia užpildyti. Realiai mes tiesiog iš e-proposal sistemos sugeneravome tuščią formą, Word programos formatu, kurią jūs galėtumėte pildyti. Ir naudoti. Taip pat ten yra ir biudžeto Excelio failas, jeigu norėtumėte pildyti ne e-proposal sistemoje. Tik perspėjame, kad vis tiek paraišką reikės prieš pateikiant užpildyti e-proposal sistemoje ir pateikti per e-proposal sistemą. Į koncepcijos formą galėtumėte rasti mūsų svetainėje lifeprojektai.lt pareiškėjams, skiltyje pareiškėjams, tada skiltis gairės ir kiti dokumentai, ir ten kaip tik yra tradicinių projektų gairės pareiškėjams ir 18 metų koncepcijos formos pavyzdžiai. Būtent ENF, tai turima minti ir išteklių efektyvumo sritį, ir NAT, tai turima minti gamtos ir biologinės įvairovės sritį. Jos koncepcijos formos pavyzdį galite rasti. Dar mes turime valandą laiko numatyto eterio ir įrašo, tai labai tikiuosi, kad pavyks mūsų ekspertų atstatyti ryšį ir jis grįš į eterį. Aš trumpai pabandysiu išsijungti, galbūt ekspertas tuomet lengviau galės prisijungti. Mikko, I see that you are coming back, getting ready for online. So I hope we will soon have you. While you were not here, I was answering a few questions to the participants that were raised in Lithuanian, but we are really willing you to join us as you have much more experience than me. Mes taip pat pratęsime transliaciją, tiesiog nenorime jos nutraukti, nes tada jūs bus sudėtinga seminarą iš naujo pradėti, tai labai dėkojame Jums už kantrybę, kad Jūs dar esate su mumis ir netrukus pratęsime, kai tik ekspertas prisijungs. Seminaro video įrašas yra numatytas 2 valandų trukmės, tai tikrai mes turime seminarui dar laiko iki 12 valandos. Galiu pasakyti dar informaciją dėl nacionalinio kofinansavimo. Tai kviečiame rašant koncepcijoje, jeigu jums aktualu, koncepcijoje nurodyti galimybę, kad Lietuvos Respublikos aplinkos ministerija bus kofinansuotojas. Bendrojo finansavimo aprašą, būtent LIFE projektų finansavimą iš nacionalinio biudžeto, esame parengę jo pakeitimą ir netrukus artimiausiomis dienomis jis bus pateiktas ministerijoje patvirtinimui. Kai tik aprašo dėl bendro finansavimo pakeitimas bus patvirtintas, tuomet iš karto informuosime apie tai svetainėje lifeprojektai.lt, taip pat bus apie tai parašyta informacija ir mūsų LIFE projektai Facebook'e, taip pat ir aplinkos ministerijos svetainėje, kur yra berods skiltis parama ir ten yra skiltis specialiai LIFE programai, joje taip pat bus paviešintas. Hello Mikko, you're back. Nice to hear you.
I'm back. How long was I away?
I think you stopped at actions and means involved.
Okay.
In e-proposal, it was about 12 minutes ago.
Okay, I don't know what happened. So okay. Should I continue from here?
Yes, please.
Okay, very sorry. This is something what happens with the technique, but now I hope I'm back online. So
yes, you are.
Okay. So the actions and means involved. So
could you please share your screen?
Yes, I'll do that once again. Wait a minute. It starts from here. Can you see now?
Yes.
You can see.
Yes,
okay.
we can
Excellent.
see.
Okay. So sorry for this interruption. I hope you were able to use that time a bit more fruitfully. I didn't realize I was talking here by myself. Sometimes a bit funny to talk only by myself. But okay, let's continue about the actions and means involved. This is basically the list of actions you are going to do in your project. I would recommend you to once again return to the idea that you have established and explained what is the problems you are targeting in your project, and they have turned into project objectives. So you might have here an idea that you start listing your actions and means, but these are the, let's say you name a problem, and these are the actions and the means you are going to implement in your project. Also remember to tick this 25% box here for that you have at least 25% for the concrete conservation measures. If you don't click this, it might jeopardize your project proposal completely. So please do keep this in mind. So and also at this stage, explain if some of your project actions are dependent or targeted towards certain key stakeholders. So please provide information also that okay, this training is completely targeted towards, let's say, farmers or another key stakeholder group. It's dependent and it's targeted, or if you need some certain stakeholders for your actions, let's say they are a stakeholder related to, let's say, the permits. For example, you indicate already at this stage that, okay, you need this and this authority for issuing this permit, and then you probably would reflect this issue back in your expected constraints and risks, where you would explain that this you have an issue with the permits, that you need to apply for the permits, and what have you done in order to make sure that you can get the permits, for example. So list your actions. Remember to address also what are the means that, let's say, meadows by clearing bushes and mowing. So it includes both information, the actions and the means, how you are going to do. Expected results. This is something what we usually do as a bullet list. Now we quite often forget the approach that we would have a subtitles by a problem or by an objective. This is mainly just a list of the actions and their quantitative and qualitative outcomes, and also remember to address how they are related to the species and the habitats and the problems you're addressing in your project. So a simple list of, let's say, 3 management plans, which sites they are covering a certain amount of hectares, another 2,000 sites and certain habitats. Or your restoration actions is targeting certain hectares of coastal meadows, for example. Let's say pragmatic bullet list. Of course, you might end up in problems with the number of characters. So then you might want to write really in a concise way about the project management. This will be perfectly managed project, and not you are not expected to write too many words about the LIFE obligatories like web pages and layman's report and things like that. This could be just summarized that, okay, we are fulfilling all the LIFE dissemination obligations, for example. So always need to keep track on the number of characters you have available. Then this continuation was one of the questions I received already earlier. So this is, I would recommend you to be pragmatic in the first place. You check the list of the actions you have in your project, and then you think, do I need to continue this action after the project? And if I realize that, okay, continue this, okay, meadow management. If you're training some, let's say, farmers or some keystones, do I need to repeat this training in the long run several other times in the future or something? Just make a list of the actions, and then you are expected to comment who will continue these actions, how you will continue, and which money you are going to use. And this is something that you might not know this at this stage, but you are expected to have still some kind of idea how you are going to deal with. And this is also the moment of truth for all the applicants, saying if the list of the actions that needs to be continued is really long, it means that you might have a really long list of actions that are recurring. That's one problem. And then you have some actions that where you have really, let's say, a big sustainability challenge. It is a risk assessment whether this project should be financed at all if you are not able then to convincingly explain that this is our plan, how we are going to continue the implementation of certain actions. Also at this place, I would recommend you to also address and comment something about your transferability and replicability actions, because they are also very much related to the sustainability. Because you might need, in order to receive these sustainable results, you might need to reach certain key stakeholders or certain key authorities and make a difference, let's say, in the best practice guidelines or adoption of recommendations and things like that. And these are transferability actions. And so I myself think that the transferability and sustainability are quite related to each other. So at this place, you might consider having subtitles. These are the sustainability issues, and these are the transferability and replicability issues of your project. Project, as explained earlier, you don't have any extra points if you are trying to fulfill two topics. One topic is enough. 2 topics, of course, is the maximum, but here you're expected to explain how you really fulfill these topics. So if you take here habitats and species in Natura 2000 sites, then you start listing which of the habitats are you targeting, to which extent, and which the species are directly targeted by your project. The same applies, for example, in the next tick box. If you apply here that, okay, you are targeting habitats and species in unfavorable declining status, you explain that these and these habitats are, according to your national report, unfavorable and declining, and then you list these habitats are targeted by my project. And this is the way you sort of explain how your project is fulfilling these topics. But be honest, you don't need to tick 2 boxes here. 1 is enough. Think that you completely fulfill. Then the partnership part is they are looking for which kinds of beneficiaries you have in a project, and asking you to list the key beneficiaries. You might end up in a problem with just a number of characters if you have really a lot of beneficiaries. In that case, you might first of all think that you can use abbreviations, at least for the beneficiaries that are known by the Commission as LIFE beneficiaries, because they might already know this beneficiary. I would not perhaps myself write this part in a way that it is just a complete list of the beneficiaries and explaining what is their role in the project, because they might be beneficiaries that are having more or less similar kind of role. That's why I would probably summarize, make this part in a way that I would have these beneficiaries.
Atsiprašome už trukdymus, tuoj vėl bandysime Miko pakviesti į eterį. Tiesiog problema yra tame, kad kai jisai rodo pristatymą, jis tada nemato mūsų LiveStormo platformos ir nežino, kad mes praradome ryšį su juo. Tuoj pat pabandysime jį informuoti. Yes, Mikko, you are back.
Yeah, it seems that this connection is getting interrupted. Okay, did you hear about the partnership part already?
Not full. No, maybe you can start.
Not full. Okay, so sorry about this connection issue here. I don't really know what's going on. My connection seems to be quite okay here, so let's hope this is not getting interrupted too many times again. So about the partnership, I was explaining that you can use the abbreviations for the known LIFE beneficiaries, because you might end up in just a long and dull list of the beneficiaries and using many characters only just for the name of the beneficiary. Because I think more important part of this section is to explain the role of the beneficiary you have and why they are selected for your project. And in this respect, what we are doing basically is that we are thinking that you can group the beneficiaries by their role in the project. These beneficiaries are linked to the, let's say, your monitoring actions or your management planning or your nature education, and then you would explain that, okay, these are the beneficiaries, their names, and what they are really doing in the project. So this is how you explain that, how you sort of selected your beneficiaries in a sense. I wouldn't really make just a dull list of the beneficiaries, that name of the beneficiary role in the project, but turn it in another way around, that you can categorize and find similar roles in certain beneficiaries and start explaining. Of course, you don't have this problem if you only have a very limited amount of beneficiaries. Then you can just simply list by beneficiary, name the beneficiary, and explain the role in the project. But remember also to comment here what if you have co-financing in the project or expected to have co-financing. So at this stage you are to explain this issue, because in the budget you have one place where you are indicating whether you are expected to have co-financing in the project. So maybe you could comment this co-financing per beneficiary, or by as just an own a subtitle, co-financing in the project, and explain about the co-financing. It's basically up to you to make the decision whether you link this commenting by to a certain beneficiary when you are explaining the role, or you have a subtitle. Risks and constraints. I think there's two kinds of risk and constraints. The ones you have already taken into account when planning your project, and then the problems that might take place when you're implementing the project. And I think that you need to consider the both, because this is the risk assessment part on the both sides of the table, for the Commission and for the other. What kind of assurances you have for the success of your project? Have you taken into account that something might not happen as you've planned? And this is something that is quite pragmatic. What we do, we name a problem and a threat. We explain what is the severity. Are there certain actions related to? What is the description of the problem, and what is our mitigation plan? I recommend that you sort of think all the actions by action, what are the problems, and then you end up probably in a much longer list than you can ever include in this chapter. And then you select the key ones, and probably, yes, trying to find a combination of the ones that you've already taken into account in the project planning and the ones that might occur during the project. So the ones that you've already taken into account would be something, for example, related to the private landowners. Is the connection once again interrupted? Yeah, is the connection interrupted?
The connection is all right. The connection is
okay. And then, for example, the ones you've taken into account is how have you reached the private landowners? Have you reached the authorities responsible for the adoption of your management plan, or are you how have you taken into account the permit authorities? And the ones that are occurring during the project could be something related to the weather or uncertainties in the let's say application of a certain method, that it might be dependent on something, I don't know. But this is just then pick up the ones that are most important. And the role here is just to show to the Commission that you really sort of thought of these risks for your project. And this is something that will be much longer and more comprehensive than in your final proposal. Okay, then we go to the B3 form, which has two things to be written. First, you are expected to explain what is your best practice demonstration and pilot characters of your project. Have subtitles, best practice character, demonstration character, and then you explain which best practices you are going to implement and why do you think they are best practices. They've been we've been using these techniques for a long time. It's based on this and this best practice guideline or things like that. And for the demonstration part, these are the demonstration characters. You have a name of action probably, demonstrating novel ways of restoring rivers. And then you explain why it's a demonstration. You explain that this has not been done in this scale earlier anywhere else in Lithuania, and you explain what you're going to do. You, for example, how you would find a new ways of installing Crable or something. I don't know. You just explain it and show why this is demonstration. And same would then apply for the pilot ones. If you have something that is completely new, have a name of the action and explain why do you think it's demonstration and pilot. What is the, and also why it's important that you have this in your project. It's 4,000 characters, so there's reasonable amount of space to use here. EU added value is about this stage concept note phase. It's mostly about you commenting how your project fulfills LIFE regulation articles 10, 11 and 12. So this is how you start this section. You just explain how your project fits that. Those are articles that are related, that it's related to Natura 2000 and species and habitats. It's slightly repetitive towards the project topics and things like that, but this is what they are expecting. Then the other part is that you are expected to explain if you address other EU policies or environmental legislation of your country or the EU in general. And this is not just that this is linked to them, but also explaining what are you concretely doing. Are you, for example, in your if you have a meadow project, are you trying to influence the national agri-environmental scheme or best practice guidelines for the farmers or things like that? Or are you involved in the nature tourism business? Are you promoting sustainable nature tourism? And if you are, what are you concretely doing? Are you training them, or are you producing certain guidelines how sustainable nature tourism should be implemented, for example, in national parks? So explain also concretely what you are doing, just not plainly indicating that this is linked to the waste management policy. This is linked to the Water Framework Directive. No, you have to be a bit more concrete. So this is the main part of the then the technical part of the concept note. Then lastly, you have the budget, and this is where you yourself enter all these sums. The total cost and the eligible costs are in most cases exactly the same sums. Only in the durable goods you might have total costs more than the eligible cost, because there might be depreciation rules for the private beneficiaries. NGOs and public beneficiaries will have the equipment cost and infrastructure cost fully covered by the LIFE, but for the others there is depreciation rules. Only 25% of the total cost for the infrastructure and 50% for the equipment. That's the only place where these figures would only change. Then it's up to you to make sure that the calculation of the overheads is correctly done. It is maximum 7%. I would use always exactly the 7% of the direct costs, excluding the land purchase. So this is why in this example it's not even close to 7. And in the bottom part is your contribution breakdown. If you're aiming for 60, make sure that you calculate 60 from the total costs. Then you know what is your coordinating beneficiaries contribution and the associated ones and the co-financers. So these three figures here in below would then be summed up to 40% if you're applying for the 60% EU contribution, meaning that the total here in below should be exactly the same as the total cost. Then you have your budget in balance. There's no any kinds of checks in this system, so you don't get any warnings if your budget is not in balance. So it's completely up to you to make sure these calculations are correct. Once you filled in all the forms here, you can validate your proposal in the first page, and once you've validated, the button submitted to contracting agent will become active. And I think I might already have here. I would need to validate. It gives you information that okay, it has not been submitted yet. Everything is basically in place. There would be a warning here if you have exceeded the character numbers. No warnings about, let's say, wrong calculations in your project budget. And then once you validate it, you would have the submit to contracting authority button activated, and then you can submit the proposal as many times as you want. So here in the bottom you have the submit to contracting authority. I seem still to be online. It took a bit more time due to all the interruptions, but there might be now also some questions, I think.
Thank you, Mikko, for the presentation. It was really based on your experience, and we have learned a lot. So in the questions tab, we have 6 questions. While you were not here, I tried to answer the first question that is at the bottom. So maybe we skip it for now and we go back to it if we still have time. We have 25 minutes and about... Mikko, I don't see you, but please come back at least for your audio record so that you could answer the questions. We have about 25 minutes and about 6 questions. So I encourage participants to write new questions. Then we will use less time for each question if we see that we have new questions coming. If not, we can have more time for each question. Okay. So, Mikko, if you could read a question loudly, because the questions will not be seen in the record afterwards.
Okay.
So the participants can see them, but but they will not be seen after in the record. So I answered the very bottom question while you were not here. So if you could start from the second question from the bottom, Eeva's question.
Eeva, okay, it's about continuation. Is it considered as an advantage capitalization of experience / results from previous LIFE projects? Do you have to emphasize it during the stage of the concept note? Yes, I would at least in the part for the methods to be applied, the best practice character say that this is also built upon the experience and results of the previous project, and also in the first parts of the concept note about the project objectives and the actions and means, that this builds upon a previous life project as well. There's a slight problem here sometimes that you need to sort of avoid that the evaluators will have an understanding that this is just your new way of collecting new resources for implementing the actions for which you would already have an obligation as a result of your previous project, LIFE project, because LIFE projects are about sustainable results, and you need to explain in your project proposal and in the final report how you are going to implement these actions in the future. And if the explanation is that yes, we will need another LIFE project for the continuation, then then it becomes tricky. So if you are building upon the previous LIFE project, you will need to explain how this is really sort of improves improves the actions of the previous LIFE project and not just is a continuation of the similar kinds of actions. So it's please address but be aware of this slight problem so that it doesn't just show that you are trying to have a LIFE funding to carry out exactly the same actions you had in the previous project. Then the next one is, we plan to implement the project on the protection of the globally threatened species on its flyway. This project will capitalize results from previous project implemented on much smaller scale, national or bilateral. Is it considered as an advantage capitalization of results from previous LIFE projects? Yes, certainly it will be, and you would explain this also in the pre-operational context, what has been already done for this species and where you sort of continue onwards. And if you are talking considering a species and doing actions along the flyway, you can even have actions outside the EU. So just keeping in mind, if you have this flyway project, you need to consider and understand and which part of the flyway are the biggest problems. So it might not be a best investment then to, let's say, have actions already in the nesting ground if the nesting grounds are protected, but the main problems are along the flyway. So then your project might not make a big difference because you need to sort of have an objective that, for example, for the bird species, that the population numbers will increase, let's say 10% or whatever, what is realistic, but still something that is tangible. The next question seems to be in Lithuanian, which I am not that fluent with, so maybe...
This question is related to the question at the bottom. How is an international project concept developed? So I have answered already while you were not here that only the coordinating beneficiary has to submit concept note even in international projects. But then the second part of the question, is it sufficient to submit a concept note showing the potential for transferability to other countries? And is it sufficient to show actions in Lithuania inviting neighboring countries, Latvia, Poland, to participate in the actions in biodiversity projects? Or is it better to have those partners as partners in the project?
Well, this is a quite difficult question. It's let's say, first of all, it is important that you would try to pass the messages and key lessons learned also beyond your own country. It doesn't always need that you have international beneficiaries. If you have international beneficiaries, they would of course need to have a clear role in the project, meaning basically that then it's not just enough that you exchange information, but also then in another country, let's say if we would be talking about dune restoration, for example, and you want to explain to the other countries what are the challenges in the dune restoration and also explain what are the best methods to be applied. Then as a transferability action in your project, you would have let's say seminars or field visit together with the other Baltic countries just to explain and understand how this restoration and planning and monitoring would be carried out. But if you would have it as an international project, it would require that you would have, let's say, Latvian or Estonian beneficiaries who are also then restoring and managing coastal dunes in your project. Then it would be actually a real international project. If the international part is only about disseminating but not concretely doing, I have slight doubts whether it would be really considered as a real international project. But yes, please think always how in your project you can distribute the key lessons learned and also learn from other countries that are facing exactly the same problem. Then what are your advices, experience regarding involvement of non-EU partners? It's rather exception, however, in duly justified cases, as we know, it's possible. Yes, this is a difficult question. I am just exactly putting together a project that involves Norway, Russia, and Macedonia. And first of all, the actions outside EU are possible if you are able to justify that the actions will have measurable effects inside EU. And I at some point explained that especially in the species project, you could even provide quite clear and good justification why actions outside EU are needed. The species do not know the boundaries at all. So it is up to the applicant, of course, then to justify why you need outside EU countries. This is probably very, very relevant in some of the bird projects where you are targeting actions towards the whole flyway. It is then clear that you would probably need some non-EU countries if you know that the problem is existing in, let's say, a certain stopover sites which are lacking proper management or supervision, and you would then be able to engage these countries' authorities to improve the situation. So it is possible, but it's always a bit, let's say, risky, and I would not recommend that the budget for the non-EU countries would be really, really substantial, or the majority of the actions are outside EU. But this is always case by case.
Then could we move to the top and ask?
Yes.
The question?
Yeah, first one was, do we understand correctly that there is no restrictions to change cost among budget lines or partners if EU contribution remains the same? I would say exactly yes, because especially between the budget lines, you can change it for the final proposal, because now it's only just an estimation, and you are not even providing the data per partner in the concept note, so they even don't know how these costs are divided between partners. So this is clear. And the EU contribution can change up to maximum 10% if it's just increasing your own contribution. So yes, would be my answer to this.
And the next
one thing just keeping in mind for the budget when you present it in the concept note, check that the allocation are realistic, so that you are not proposing, let's say that, okay, you would have a 2 million euro project and your travel budget would be 500,000. Check that it's in that case balanced, so that you don't make these kinds of really quite, let's say, evident mistakes. Do you know whether it's possible to change the constitution of partnership at the stage of full proposal? For example, one asset benefit would be changed with another one. I think absolutely yes, it is possible. It has to be, because we are not submitting any kinds of commitment forms. So this is, at this stage, once again, just explaining your project idea and your current status of the project, that you would implement this project together with these beneficiaries. It is clear that after the concept note, you still consider, have you really engaged the project correct beneficiaries, and then you can change your consortium. The only limitation you will have here is coming back to the budget, that if you need to engage, let's say, a couple of more beneficiaries and the total number will increase, it will have also budget implications, and then you have to be careful that it's not, that the EU contribution is not changed by more than 10%. But yes, I think you can change the beneficiaries. And then, of course, if you are invited for the full application, you are not obliged to submit the full application if it turns out to be impossible. So not even that. So this is just selling your project to the evaluators that, okay, this sounds like a very good project, and okay, please submit the full proposal.
I think we have answered all questions that were written. So I encourage people from integrated project as well to raise questions, and they will be answered to you. So feel free to ask anything that is related to LIFE program.
Yeah.
And I see there's one question by Christina.
The first one is related to
could you say loudly the question?
Yeah, the first one, grant agreement, Article 2.3 requires that the coordinating beneficiary pays within the next 30 days the funds received as prepayments to the other beneficiaries. And if the question is that do you have to transfer exactly the same amounts, let's say calculated by the share of the budget of each beneficiary to all the beneficiaries, or can you sort of pay another one a bit more than the other? And the answer is yes. We've exactly done the same thing in the Finnish Fresh Habit IP. The second pre-financing we noted that there were some beneficiaries that needed the cash more than the others, and some of the beneficiaries even had more actions upcoming than the others, so it was justified to pay some of the beneficiaries a bit more than the others. So it would mean that in the next pre-financing, the other beneficiaries would then get a bit less, and then the others would get a bit more. I think this is completely up to the coordinating beneficiary to decide. And also, I think there would be even an option that you would not be even paying all your own all the pre-financing to the beneficiary, so that the coordinating beneficiary could even keep part of the pre-financing by itself and sort of only paid afterwards when they've received the information that the actions have been completed. But this is something I would recommend you to also to discuss with the monitoring team, so that to get the, let's say, the more official opinion. Then the second question was how to ensure sustainability of the office for the management of the IP project throughout the implementation period, having in mind limited working hours and budget for each partner. To be honest, I don't fully understand this question. I think if this is referring to the fact that you have a lot of beneficiaries in the project who have not, let's say, indicated enough resources for the actual project management. If this is the case, of course, you can move the money between the actions inside the project quite freely, and I would recommend that you really make sure with all your partners that they really invest in the project management, because the LIFE IP is about capacity building. It's about learning. It's about managing issues. So I think do not jeopardize your project by not having enough funding for the project management itself. But it's up to the project to make the decision how to reallocate costs from some other actions so that your management is secured. Did I understand the question correctly?
If there are people who want to specify the question that is actual for them, please do that by writing. And while we are waiting for next questions, I would remind that we have polls button, and you can say your opinion about the webinar in the polls. It's active now. We still have a few minutes left, so I encourage people to raise their last questions. We still have time.
An example of pilot nature biodiversity project. Does pilot only mean innovative method used that has never been used before? Basically, the latter one means, I would say yes, it's something that has not been tested anywhere else before. This is, of course, a bit relative. It might be maybe something that you are not aware that it has not been tested anywhere else. Let's say an innovation example would be that we have a project on Saimaa ringed seal, and one of the innovations in the project was that we developed a fishing gear that was seal friendly. We knew that these kinds of new kinds of gear has not been developed anywhere else. So we were able to say that this is a pilot. We tested and developed it and analyzed it. The other one idea would be that one of the innovations was to build artificial nests for the Saimaa ringed seal. Because of the climate change, we are not sure whether we have proper winters anymore. The Saimaa ringed seal are nesting inside snow dens, and so we need to take into account the climate change. And one of the pilot actions is that we test different kinds of artificial nests built of different material and see how they are accepted by the seals and whether they really function properly. We will test this in full scale in Saimaa, and then we'll have a pilot for the Baltic ringed seal in the Saaristomeri archipelago area. And I must address that you are not required to have pilot actions. Apart from the biodiversity project, there are certain strands where it's expected that you're a bit more experimental than in life nature, where you can have mostly best practice actions, but still, at least I would think you would need to have some demonstration actions at least. Demonstration action, innovation actions could be also something how you collect, let's say, monitoring data. You know that, okay, you would need to collect, let's say, for example, DNA samples, how you would collect the DNA samples from the traces of the animals or scats or things like that. Could be something that could be, in some circumstances, even considered a pilot action. This is sometimes a bit, let's say, a thin line between the demonstration and pilot, and it's up to you to make yourself a decision. Would you place it under demonstration or pilot?
I have one more question that I will say it loudly. If the project deals with the biodiversity of the soil, meaning the project deals with organic matter and biodiversity of all the bacteria in the soil, should that project be submitted on biodiversity strand or on resource efficiency, on soil as resource strand?
That's a difficult question. I don't know straightforward the answer. I would think that it would probably have better chances on the biodiversity because there's more budget allocated for the biodiversity strand, and definitely if the project main objective is to how to promote the diversity of the soil fauna and demonstrate how the diversity of the soil and let's say the structure of the soil, which kinds of implications it will have to the biodiversity and the link of the biodiversity to, let's say, for the cultivation results or things like that, then this sounds to me more like a biodiversity project, and if you can direct it to biodiversity, you might have better chances for the financing than in the life environment, which is, let's say, much more competitive than the life nature and biodiversity.
Okay. Thank you. So as we don't have any more questions, I think we can finish the webinar on time then. So thank you, Mikko, for being here with us. Thank you for all the participants for your patience listening, and even if we had some problems with internet connection, thank you very much for being active, raising questions. And you are free to contact us anytime and raise new questions, and we if there is a possibility, we will forward those questions to Mikko to answer later until the deadline.
So if you have any also project-specific questions, then address them to Ausra, and then we'll check what's my role then in helping you as well.
Yes. So thanks to everyone, and see you in our next events.
Yes, and I see probably some of you in Finland in a couple of weeks.